Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time we're exploring a connection between deep work and a meaningful life.
Oh, very nice.
Especially, in the knowledge work world,
Right.
which is where most of us live these days.
Mm.
And we're diving into some excerpts that you sent in from the book Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, we're about to meet a blacksmith
Oh, yeah.
who makes Viking swords.
Yeah.
We're going to jump into some brain science about happiness
Okay.
and even a touch of philosophy.
Oh, wow.
I'm already intrigued.
Well, what I find so fascinating about the way Newport sets this up
Yeah.
is that he starts with this blacksmith,
Right.
Ric Furrer,
Okay.
and Furr's work.
Yeah.
It's clearly meaningful to him,
Yeah.
but he kind of goes on to argue that it's not the task itself
Right?
that creates the meaning.
I see.
It's the depth of focus
Yeah.
and skill involved that matters,
Okay.
and that this is something we can apply to any kind of work.
So paint us a picture of what Furr's work is like.
Okay.
Because the book describes it in such vivid detail.
Yeah.
You're like, what's going on?
So imagine
Yeah.
a blacksmith's shop
Okay.
in like a converted barn in Wisconsin,
Oh, wow.
right? It's not just some like romantic image though.
Okay.
This guy's the real deal.
Yeah.
He's using ancient techniques,
Mm-hmm.
like 1,500 years old,
Bro,
to shape
yeah.
a Viking sword
Wow.
from just a small block of steel.
Okay.
And just the shaping takes 8 hours
Oh, my
of
gosh.
nonstop hammering.
And it's not just brute strength, right? Because
Yeah.
Newport really emphasizes how precise and delicate Furrer's movements are.
Exactly.
You know,
It's very skillful.
he even quotes him saying, you have to be very gentle with it or you will crack it.
Exactly. Incredible level of skill and concentration.
Wow.
Something that anyone in knowledge work
Yeah,
can relate to,
totally.
even if our tools are different. Yeah.
And then comes the dramatic part.
Okay.
Plunging that glowing hot blade
Yeah.
into oil.
Oh my God.
Flames leaping up.
Oh.
You can almost feel the heat just reading about it.
Yeah. And the final product, it's
Yeah.
more than just a weapon, right? There's
Yeah.
something more going on.
Yeah, there's a quote from Furrer that I think gets to the heart of it.
Okay.
He says, I don't need a sword,
Uh-huh.
but I have to make them.
Mm.
Like there's something about the depth of this craft,
Yeah.
the challenge and the mastery that drives him.
Yeah.
And Newport's argument is that same drive exists within us all,
Right.
regardless of what kind of work we do.
Okay, so how do we connect
Yeah.
a blacksmith hammering steel to someone, say, writing code or analyzing data all day?
Right.
Is there really a link between
Yeah.
this intense physical craft and our more mental efforts?
That's where Newport brings in some really interesting scientific research.
Okay.
So he introduces us to Winifred Gallagher,
Okay.
who's a science writer,
Okay.
and she developed what she calls her grand unified theory
Okay.
of attention and happiness.
And this all came out of her own experience facing a cancer diagnosis, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on the negative,
Yeah.
Gallagher decided to very consciously shift her attention
Okay.
to things that she enjoyed.
Like what?
She loved movies,
Okay.
going for walks,
Yeah.
even having a martini every day at 6:30.
That sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. And it sounds almost too simple.
Yeah.
But what she found was that this deliberate choice in where she focused her attention
Yeah.
actually made her experience of the situation much more positive.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So it's like by choosing what we focus on,
Mm-hmm.
we can actually change our experience of the world
Right.
and even influence our own happiness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just some anecdotal observation either.
Okay.
Gallagher spent years studying the science of attention.
Right. And found that neurologically, our brains construct our worldview
Wow.
based on what we pay attention to.
I see.
So if we fixate on the negative,
Yeah.
our world will feel predominantly negative.
Right.
But by choosing to focus on the positive, even in difficult situations,
Uh-huh.
we can experience more happiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we apply that to work,
Right.
does it mean that those of us who can focus deeply on tasks, even challenging ones, are actually priming our brains for more happiness?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds counterintuitive to think that hard work
Right.
equals more joy.
That's the fascination part, right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Deep work demands our full attention, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have to shut out distractions
Yeah.
and really engage
Yeah.
with a task.
Absolutely.
And according to Gallagher's research, that act of focusing deeply,
Yeah.
especially on something we find meaningful,
Yeah.
can actually shape our overall perception of the world
Right.
and contribute to our happiness.
Okay, so we're starting to see how this idea of depth can shift our perspective and even impact our well-being.
Yeah.
But how does this play out in the day-to-day reality of knowledge work,
Right.
where distractions are, let's face it, constantly lurking
Right.
around every corner,
Right.
you know?
That's where Newport highlights another crucial benefit
Okay.
of deep work.
Okay.
He calls it the attention hijack.
Okay.
And it's like deep work hijacks our focus,
Uh-huh.
preventing us from constantly flitting between
Maybe.
all the shallow, often negative distractions
Right.
that bombard us in the modern workplace.
Totally.
Yeah, he even uses a very relatable example
Oh, you
from his
did?
own life.
The email inbox saga.
Yes.
I have to admit, I chuckled when I read that part
Mm-hmm.
because it's so familiar.
Yeah.
He describes 5 emails he sent before sitting down to write, and they're all so typical.
Yeah.
Dealing with a scammer, trying to schedule a meeting, getting sucked into some office politics.
Yes.
It's like a day in the life.
Exactly. Of any knowledge worker.
And the point he's making is
Yeah.
that for many of us, this is what our workday looks like.
Right.
Bouncing between these shallow tasks,
Yeah.
constantly reacting
Yeah.
to these external demands.
Totally.
It's almost like we're living in a perpetual state of distraction.
Which, if we consider Gallagher's research,
Right.
is likely to be a recipe for stress and unhappiness, even if each individual email
Right.
or task isn't inherently that bad.
Yeah.
It's the constant shallowness itself that's wearing us down.
Exactly. It's like we're snacking all day on junk food.
Yeah.
It might be tasty in the moment,
Right.
but it leaves us feeling unsatisfied and sluggish in the long run.
Right.
Deep work, on the other hand, is like a nourishing meal.
Uh-huh.
It takes more effort,
Yeah.
but it provides a deeper sense of satisfaction and fulfillment.
Okay, so how do we break free from this shallowness trap
Yeah.
and find more of those nourishing meals in our work?
Newport introduces some fascinating research
Okay.
from psychologist Csikszentmihalyi.
Mm-hmm.
And his concept of flow states.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced flow?
Absolutely.
What's that like?
It's that feeling of complete absorption
Okay.
in an activity
Yeah.
where time seems to fly by
Right. Yeah.
and you're completely engaged and energized. Csikszentmihalyi was fascinated
Yeah.
by this state
Yeah.
and wanted to understand what was happening in the brain
Okay.
during those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his research method was pretty innovative for the time, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
He used something called the experience sampling method, or ESM,
Okay.
where people would carry pagers,
Pagers.
and they would record their experiences throughout the day when prompted.
Wow.
So it gave him a real-time snapshot
Right.
of what people were feeling and thinking
Uh-huh.
as they went about their daily lives.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So what did he discover about flow and happiness?
Well, his findings were pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah.
He found that people actually reported being happier
Oh.
when they were engaged in challenging work
Wow.
than when they were relaxing.
Really?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We tend to think,
that leisure activities are the key
right,
to happiness.
to happiness and relaxation.
Yeah.
But Csikszentmihalyi's data suggests otherwise.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It kind of go against what you think at first.
Right.
But if you think about it in the context of Gallagher's research,
Yeah.
it starts to make sense.
Okay.
Our brains thrive on challenge.
Right.
We find deep satisfaction
Yeah.
in pushing ourselves,
Yeah.
in mastering difficult skills.
Okay.
And that's where the connection to deep work becomes even clearer.
So it's not just about relaxing on the beach.
Right.
Maybe achieving that flow state is actually more fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, especially for those of us in knowledge work, where so much of what we do involves mental effort.
That's exactly what Csikszentmihalyi found.
Okay.
Deep work, with its intense focus
Yeah.
and demand for skill,
Right.
is almost perfectly designed
Yeah.
to trigger those flow states.
Oh.
It's like a fast track
Okay.
to that feeling of energized focus
Right.
and deep satisfaction.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together,
Yeah,
but how do we practically apply this to our own work?
right,
I mean, let's be real. Most of us can't just redesign our jobs
right.
to be one big flow state.
That's true, but there are things we can do.
Okay.
Csikszentmihalyi argued that even if we can't change the structure of our work entirely,
Yeah.
we can still actively seek out those opportunities for flow
Okay.
within our existing roles.
So it's not just about finding the perfect flow state job.
Right.
It's about cultivating those moments
Yeah.
of deep engagement within the work we're already doing.
Exactly. It's about identifying those tasks that challenge us,
Right.
that require us to stretch our skills and focus intensely,
Uh-huh.
and then prioritizing those tasks,
Okay.
creating space for them
Right.
in our schedules.
Yeah.
Remember, it's about depth, not just the type of work itself.
So is that what Newport means when he talks about building a deep work habit?
Mm-hmm.
Like actively training our brains to focus
Yeah.
and enter those states of deep engagement?
That's a big part of it.
Okay.
But Newport also takes it a step further by
Ah.
bringing in a philosophical perspective.
Okay.
So he introduces the work of philosophers Hubert Dreyfus and Sean Dorrance Kelly,
Okay.
who explore the idea of meaning
Okay.
in the modern world.
And they have a rather bleak outlook, don't they?
Kind of, yeah.
They argue that the modern emphasis on individual autonomy
Right.
has actually stripped away some of the meaning from our lives.
That's right.
Wow.
They suggest that we've lost sight of what they call the sacred,
Okay.
that sense of inherent meaning and order
Yeah.
that used to be found in things outside ourselves.
Right.
And that loss, they argue, has led to a kind of nihilism,
Oh, wow.
a feeling that nothing really matters.
That's a pretty heavy thought.
It is.
But I could see how it might resonate with people,
Yeah.
especially in today's world where it's so easy to feel disconnected
Right.
and lost in the noise.
Exactly.
But how does this connect to the idea of deep work?
Well, Dreyfus and Kelly argue that craftsmanship
Okay.
offers a potential path back to meaning
Okay.
in a post-Enlightenment world.
Craftsmanship.
Yeah.
But that brings us right back to our blacksmith, doesn't it?
Mm.
What does hammering steel have to do with finding meaning
Yeah.
in a data-in-driven world?
It's not about the specific craft itself.
Okay.
They use the example of a wheelwright,
Okay.
someone who shapes wood into wagon wheels.
Right.
And they describe how the wheelwright finds meaning,
Okay.
not by imposing their own arbitrary ideas onto the wood,
Uh-huh.
but by cultivating the skill to discern the inherent value and purpose
Yeah.
within the material itself.
Oh, I see.
It's about recognizing a meaning that exists
Okay.
outside of the individual.
So it's less about creation
Yeah.
and more about uncovering something
Yes.
that's already there.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we apply that to, say, writing code
Yeah.
or designing a marketing campaign?
Right.
It's not like we're working with some raw natural material
Right.
like wood or steel.
That's where Dreyfus and Kelly's argument gets really interesting.
Okay.
They believe there's nothing inherently special about manual labor.
Okay.
When it comes to finding this type of meaning, any pursuit that requires and rewards high levels of skill
Okay.
can become a source of meaning.
I see.
It's about approaching our work
Yeah.
with a craftsman's mindset.
Okay, so maybe even coding can be a form of craftsmanship.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this could apply to knowledge work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Newport even quotes a coding prodigy
Okay.
named Santiago Gonzalez. Okay.
Who describes beautiful code as being like poetry.
Wow.
And in the book, The Pragmatic Programmer,
Okay.
they compare computer programmers to medieval cathedral builders,
Wow.
emphasizing that any work, regardless of its nature,
Right.
can be approached with a sense of craftsmanship
Okay.
and reverence.
So it's not about the specific job title.
Right.
It's about the way we approach our work.
Exactly.
We can find meaning in any job, in any task, if we approach it with that craftsman's spirit.
That's the key.
I like that.
It's about cultivating our skills,
Yeah.
honing our craft,
Uh-huh.
and seeing the inherent value in what we do.
Okay.
And here's the crucial link.
Okay.
Cultivating that level of craftsmanship requires deep work.
Ah, I see.
Through deep work that we develop the mastery
Right.
and the perspective needed to see our work and the world
Right.
through that craftsman's lens.
And that brings us full circle, doesn't it? Back to the power of deep work to transform not just our output. Right.
But our entire experience of work and life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Deep work isn't just about productivity or
Right.
getting things done.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into a deeper source of meaning and satisfaction.
You know, thinking back to our listeners' context as a knowledge worker,
Yeah.
it strikes me how relevant this all is.
Right?
We're constantly bombarded with distractions, with demands for our attention.
Yes.
And it's so easy to get caught up in the shallows.
That's the trap Newport warns us about.
Yeah.
And it's not just about feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's about missing out on that deeper level of engagement
Right.
and fulfillment that comes from doing work that truly matters.
So what's the antidote?
Yeah.
How do we, as knowledge workers,
Right.
cultivate more depth in our work lives?
Right.
Is it as simple as just blocking out distractions
Yeah.
and scheduling time for deep work?
That's definitely a crucial step.
Okay.
But it's also about shifting our mindset, about recognizing the value of deep work, not just for its output,
Right.
but for its inherent ability
Yeah.
to connect us to something larger
Okay.
than ourselves.
It's like we're rewiring our brains to find meaning and satisfaction
Yeah,
in the process of work itself, not just the outcomes.
exactly. And that's where Newport's message becomes really powerful, especially for knowledge workers
Right.
who often feel disconnected
Yeah.
from the tangible results of their efforts.
Right.
It's about reclaiming the depths,
Yeah.
the craftsmanship,
Uh-huh.
the inherent meaning that can be found in any work,
Right.
regardless of its nature.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so empowering.
It is.
But how do we practically make that shift?
Right.
How do we go from feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
by the shallowness to actually experiencing that sense of depth and meaning in our daily work?
Well, Newport offers a lot of practical strategies in his book, but I think the first step is simply awareness. Recognizing how much of our time and energy is being consumed by shallow tasks,
Right.
those constant distractions and demands on our attention. So it's about taking stock of our current work habits.
Yeah.
Identifying those areas where we're getting pulled into the shallows
Mm-hmm.
and then consciously making choices to prioritize depth.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not about becoming some kind of workaholic monk.
Right.
It's about finding a balance.
Right.
Recognizing that deep work requires energy and focus.
Yeah.
And we need to be intentional
Right.
about how we manage those resources.
So it's about being deliberate about how we spend our time and energy,
Mm-hmm.
making sure we're not sacrificing the deep, meaningful work
Right.
for the sake of those endless shallow tasks that often feel so urgent,
Yeah.
but ultimately don't contribute much to our overall sense of fulfillment.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like training a muscle.
Okay.
The more we practice deep work,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes to enter those states of flow.
To experience that deep sense of satisfaction and connection to our work.
And the rewards are worth it, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Not just in terms of productivity or career success,
Yeah.
but in terms of finding a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a quote from Newport
Okay.
that I think perfectly captures this idea.
Okay.
He says, "A deep life is a good life any way you look at it."
I love that quote.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the transformative power of depth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about escaping the modern world
Right.
or rejecting technology.
Yeah.
It's about using those tools intentionally to create space for deep work in our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming our attention, choosing where we focus our energy,
Right.
and cultivating a deeper connection to the world around us through our work.
It's like we're evolving into a new species,
Uh-huh.
Homo sapiens dipensis,
I love that.
a subspecies that thrives on depth,
Yeah.
that finds meaning and purpose
Mm-hmm.
in pushing the limits of our cognitive abilities.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It captures the essence of what Newport is advocating for.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to something deep within us,
Right.
a longing for that sense of meaning and purpose
Yeah.
that can be found in the depths of our work.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to turn our attention back to you, the listener,
Okay.
thinking about your own work,
Yeah.
your own daily experiences.
Mm-hmm.
What resonates with you most
Yeah.
from what we've discussed today?
Where do you see opportunities
Right.
for more depth in your own work life?
Yeah.
What steps can you take, even small ones,
Right.
to start cultivating those deep work habits
Yeah.
and experiencing the benefits for yourself?
Because ultimately, this isn't just about understanding Cal Newport's book.
Right.
It's about understanding ourselves
Yeah.
and how we can create a more meaningful and fulfilling work life.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's the ultimate goal of any deep dive.
Yeah.
To not only learn something new,
Right.
but to emerge with a fresh perspective
Yeah.
on our own lives and how we choose to live them.
It feels like we've been on this incredible journey together,
Yeah.
exploring the depths of deep work and its connection to a meaningful life.
And what's remarkable is how these seemingly disparate ideas,
Right.
blacksmith, brain science, philosophy,
Yeah.
all converge on this central theme.
Right.
It's as if we're wired for depth, for finding meaning and purpose in pushing beyond the surface.
It's like we're all explorers, venturing into uncharted territories within ourselves.
And just like any great expedition, it's bound to be both challenging and rewarding.
Right.
There will be moments when we're tempted to turn back, to retreat to the comfort of the familiar and the shallow.
But if we persevere, if we embrace the challenges and push through those moments of resistance, we might discover something truly extraordinary.
A hidden world of meaning, purpose, and profound satisfaction waiting to be unearthed.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought, a challenge, if you will. What if, instead of simply trying to find the right job, we focus on cultivating depth in whatever work we're already doing?
What if we approached our daily tasks, even the mundane ones, with a craftsman's mindset, seeking out those opportunities for mastery and meaning?
What if we saw our work not just as a means to an end, but as a portal to a world full of wonder and possibility?
A world where depth is not a luxury, but a necessity.
Wow.
A fundamental aspect of a truly fulfilling life.
It's a powerful idea, isn't it?
It is.
And one that has the potential to transform not just our work, but our entire lives.
Well said.
So keep diving deep, dear listener, and see what treasures you uncover along the way.